Yes, I hope you all enjoyed your break there as well. We're just getting lined up for our next session. Just before we do, and we have sort of, as most of you voted for in September, we've changed the time from 4 till 5:30. We've condensed it down to an hour and a half rather than 2 hours. But what we've done is that at 5:30, just gone today, so 5:35, we'll basically open up the floor for open networking. So take the opportunity, go grab a beer from the fridge, grab a cold drink, grab a warm drink if you need one, and use the opportunity to have a catch up at least once a month with some very established peers, some real developers, some real professionals, and people who want to get good deals done. And the table I've just been on now is certainly not unfamiliar with the idea of good deals. A lot of emails and potential deal flow going around. So use the opportunity and take the time and get to know some peers and just get some perspective. I think it was one of our guests, Nick Cowell, who said to us back in May that one of the most vital things you can get at the moment and anytime really in this sort of strange world is perspective. So do use this opportunity to get perspective from your peers and just get different points of view on ways to approach challenges, opportunities, things that may happen as well. It's all valuable, especially when we can't do this in a venue, in a restaurant, in a pub, as we would do normally. So just before we get into the content, and Juliana, if you want to hear Richard come and join me on stage, just so he can accept the glory of the position. We've got a very, very important announcement, and that is that I am honoured to say that Richard Peutherer, who's our panel host today, an esteemed real developer and a very, very active contributor to the community, is officially our 2021 Chairman of the Committee for TrustedLand. We're very honoured that Richard has taken up the post, is going to be carrying on the great work from Emmanuel Ezekiel in the past, and before him, Diksesh Patel. And Richard will be taking a small group of developers through the process for next year to make sure that we are on point, that we're listening, and that we're getting good quality feedback from you, our members. So I'm very, very honoured that Richard has accepted the role. We're very glad to have him. He's a fantastic contributor, a great businessman, and we really are excited to see what you can bring in terms of great feedback. So, Richard, before anything else, thank you very much for taking the role on. We appreciate it.
Alex, my pleasure. Thank you ever so much, and it's something I'm thoroughly looking forward to. The last year and a half being part of Developers Boardroom and now being a real developer for the last year, I've seen all of the benefits that come with that, and if we can get that out as a broader message and help enhance the experience for everyone, then I'm all behind that. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm thoroughly looking forward to it.
Wonderful. Well, like we did with the TrustedLand Awards, I feel like we needed some music sort of to go off in the background there, but unfortunately being in the digital space, it's not always that easy. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave you to your panel session. I think you're going to do a quick introduction to yourself now so that those who want to get to know the new chairman of the committee can understand a bit more about yourself in the background, and then we'll welcome our panel up to get into the main feature. So I'll leave you on stage. I'll see you shortly.
That's very kind. Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Juliana. I think you're bringing up my my panelists as well. But whilst you're doing that, as Alex says, my name's Richard Peutherer. I'm the founder of Inspired Equity. We're a development business that primarily focus on the conversion of existing buildings into residential. Not always under permitted development, but this afternoon. This is a chat all about permitted development, and so I'm now going to move on very quickly because we have a whole host of things to cover this afternoon. So I'm delighted to be chairing this panel this afternoon alongside my three really highly regarded colleagues, and I want to give them a very brief opportunity to introduce themselves first before we get into the questions. Doris, wonderful to see you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you? How's everyone else?
I'm great, thanks. Would you like to give a brief intro as to who you are and what you do?
Okay, my name's Doris Ishack, and I work with DI Properties. We're based in Manchester Square in Marylebone. We have a very strong team of professionals where we deal with investment and development, property, disposal and acquisitions. We've been probably going for about 30 years, so we have a very strong track record. We deal with 50% on market, 50% off market, and really it's about relationships. And I think over that amount of years, we've built up the relationships to reap the rewards and helping our clients maximize their properties.
Fantastic, thank you. Nicholas, great to see you too.
Thank you.
You need no introduction, but I have to, of course, give you the floor to say hello to everyone.
Yeah, something to look forward to for years and years. We specialise in hoping to get safe income, what's going on, but here to obviously to share my experience with permitted development and hopefully answer some questions about this minefield area that we're all trying to get involved in.
Fantastic, thank you. Alex, great to see you too.
Thank you very much. I suppose last but not least is myself. Hi, Alex Fox. I head up the South East Land team at Cushman Wakefield. We are a residential development agency team over there, consisting of 9 people. We cover London and the South East. My interest is only the South East. The London boroughs do not interest me whatsoever, albeit we do have a specialist team that cover that. The sort of range of assets that I tend to advise on behalf of landowners and purchasers is anything from up to currently instructed on something 7,500 units, urban extension up in the Midlands, right down to the permitted development right assets that we'll be focusing on today. Sort of smallest sort of thing would be about 30 or 40 units that we would take on and provide some advice over. Looking forward to this session. It should be really good.
Fantastic. Me too. Thanks, Alex. Right, we've got a whole bunch of questions to muse over. And the first one I'm initially going to come to you, Nicholas, with, if I may. In light of the recent PD changes, where do you see the PD opportunity being more available now and in the future from a location perspective?
Well, I think one of the problems is all the sort of the obvious low-hanging fruit has probably been bought up over the last 10 years or so. So a lot of the office buildings we thought would be great blocks of flats, they've all gone. So where do we really go from here? And I know that there's been a whole lot of reform that Boris Johnson announced recently with changing, I think there's going to obviously be, small opportunities along high street shops and but there are still a lot of, although we've got to be minded that, offices, despite what people are saying, are still going to be needed. So I think you've got to sort of potentially pick your location and area as well. A lot of the buildings near stations in sort of towns, I think, and a lot of buildings, more industrial buildings, have been sort of looked at again for sort of studio type accommodation, which again, I would say I'd be very, very aware if that's what you're going for.
Oh, fantastic, thank you. And Alex, what's your view on the same question, please?
Yeah, I think I'm sort of going to take a slightly different view on this, because I think I think Nicholas' words are absolutely spot on there. But from my perspective, I think the impact of COVID-19 on the office market, and I think we need to go back to thinking about why the PDR process exists in the first place, and that's really to recycle redundant buildings. We are talking about predominantly secondary and tertiary office buildings getting reutilised, revitalised into something useful for this economy. And where I think the sort of the short-term opportunity might lie is where the existing use value of these offices that actually may be in slightly more central locations rather than those on the periphery that have been recycled into residential assets because of the attractiveness of the locations and the lack therefore in the same for the office market. Perhaps those periphery office buildings are becoming more interesting to the office occupiers these days because of perhaps more localized way of working. So I wonder if, and I don't know this, nobody can crystal ball gaze, but I do wonder if the opportunity is going to exist in more central locations, which offers better upside for the residential development side of things.
Fantastic, thank you, Alex. And then Doris, the same question to you, please. What's your view?
Well, actually, to be honest with you, I think it's really opportunity-led, and it's actually for us, it's finding the opportunities rather than a specific location. I think I have to agree with Alex that central will probably come into the forefront for residential conversions purely because it hasn't been able to previously. It has been, zone 2s, borders of zone 1s, but we really we've got 3 deals in hand in W1 at the moment as offices, 2 for conversions, actually 1 as an office, ranging from 1 million to 50 million. So it is actually about opportunity-led schemes and what you can do with it. And I do think that not only are the offices being looked for PD, but alternative uses, co-living, student investment, and long-term hold.
I think I'd like to just add something else to close this one out, actually, and it is opportunity led. I completely agree with Doris on that statement, and I think an interesting thing for everybody here that's looking to acquire PDR opportunities speculatively or otherwise is to think about your tenant. Who's the tenant in the building? Have they got difficulties? What are they up to? Are they trading properly? Are they trading fully? Are they in occupation? Are they seeking subletting space for space they've got too much of at the moment? And it's all little triggers like that might influence your decision making over to attack a building properly or not.
Brilliant, thank you, Alex. And that's a nice segue into the next question. But I'm going to go back to Doris initially on my next question. Putting forward the correct numbers for a PD opportunity isn't always easy. Doris, as an agent, how do you work with your clients, so the property owners, to ensure that they secure the deal they want, whilst also ensuring that the developer is able to make a profit out of the development?
Well, we basically we first need to understand the asset itself and the tenants in the asset and how long the building is it going to be vacant, and the different opportunities, and then we seek outside planning consultants. I think you really need, rather than a vendor to say, I think you can get 200 units on this, where it's clearly you can only get 70. It's a very different market to what it was 2-3 years ago, with all the micro units and putting as many units as possible. And I think you really do need, as much as I will be the professionals to sell it, I think you need, as a planning consultant, if you are wanting to look at it, to go down the residential route or the co-living route or potentially mixed use route, whatever one it is, you do need to get the professional on board to actually align both myself as the agent and the professional and my client. And then we work all hand in hand, and I work like their in-house agent, that we bring in the planning consultant, and we work as a team. So we can actually maximize the benefit of the property for the vendor, but also then be realistic, so there's enough in it for someone to come in and do whatever they wish to do on it. And it's also it's also bricks and mortar value. It's not just residential, it could be commercial, and we could look at clients that could maximize it from the commercial aspect too. Got it,
thank you. Alex, same question to you, please.
Yeah, I have to say, I sadly, rightly or wrongly, or for my sins, I come from an architectural background. I sort of part qualified as an architect before becoming a surveyor. So there's a lot of negative press that exists around the delivery of some of these PDR schemes, and some of the things that we've seen, we've all heard, are just that they're not very nice, really, from an architectural and a living standpoint. And I think it's really important to recognise, exactly as Doris is highlighted there, that you've got to get your professional team around you right. You've got to get the right team around you to deliver you the right advice in order that you know you are going to deliver something that people want to live in. And I think that's absolutely vital. Picking an office, searching an office building that's simply got a tenant that's going to expire in 6 months, which gives you an opportunity to do something in planning terms. Well, that might be great, but the building fabric may not lend itself to the conversion with ample or good quality living in it. And I think, we will have a responsibility here to try to make living better for the community. And that's exactly what this forum is about. It's what TrustedLand is about. It's about doing things in the right way. And I'd hope that we're sort of preaching to the already converted, given that you are all on this and interested in doing this in the right manner with a brand like TrustedLand behind us. So, my humble takeaway here is please do it nicely.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alex. And Nicholas, I need to pose it in a slightly different fashion for you, because as a developer. So when we're looking at the costs, what are your recommendations to developers to identify the most accurate numbers for PD opportunities?
It's difficult because, first of all, you rarely get a situation where you're buying a sort of an oven-ready building which is vacant. There's always going to be issues. There's always going to be leases there. There could be lots of different things going on around you which you need to sort of reflect upon, and you might be holding the building for some time. Obviously, you do need a very good team. There's no question around you. Architects, engineers, looking at loadings, that type. Make sure it works as well, because you can't have people just working from office buildings with with low ceilings, etc., which don't work well as flats. So there are many considerations to think about. And as Doris rightly said, there are many different applications for residential types of building, whether it's co-living, whether it's residential flats, whether it's type of to develop these tiny micro complaining about, and he's getting a lot of adverse press about as well. Sure.
Thank you. And Nick, I'm going to stay with you for the next question. It's a bit of a controversial question. If the masses are all heading towards the direction of permitted development with the new legislation that's been released, is now the right time to be chasing after new PD opportunities, or would it be sensible to look elsewhere?
Like, I think you've got to look at what actually works and what doesn't work. And just because everyone else is buying it doesn't mean you should be buying it. Being counter-cyclical is always the best way in any market. Do the opposite to what everyone else is doing. You've probably got more success. Looking at all the new legislation won't work, in my opinion. And I think that you've got to be realistic about it. And I think you've got to sort of know your market, know your cost of development. If you don't, you're going to come badly unstuck.
Sure, thank you. And Doris, same question to you. What's your view on that, please?
I actually think that at the end of the day, it's again, everyone's aspirations is to earn money, but it depends where your fortes are. And if your forte is in conversions and development, there's no reason why you shouldn't be focused there. But it's all about, again, the opportunity and what people have got burnt on previously. And it's now showing because they're not getting funding for mortgages because they're micro units. Lots of people have got burnt being in the rush of buying the PD when it first came to the market, and everyone could get 52 days and get off, flats. But a lot of thought didn't go into it, and now it's come unstuck, and now I'm getting buildings from receivers and situations where people have rushed too quickly into it because the planning has been easy to obtain, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's right for a buyer or a developer to go in just because you can get PD. Yeah. So I think it's an air of caution for people to make sure that, as Nicholas says, make sure you've got the numbers, make sure you've got the professionals. Alex said, he's an architect, you can see what he can see and to make sure it works. And it's all about making a deal work. Yes, if it's easy to get the planning, great, let's go and get the planning for permitted development. But does it work? That's the bottom line.
Fantastic, thank you. And Alex, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, very, very briefly actually, and I'll try not to rabbit on for too long. But I think the one thing that's really interesting about, we're talking about margin here, right? We're talking about how to make a margin. And once upon a time, when permitted development right was first introduced in whatever it was, 2015, there was a whole raft of developers out there thinking they could make a margin simply by buying an office building without permitted development rights, wait 8 weeks, get a planning consent for it, sell it on for a turn. And gone are those days. They don't exist anymore. The permitted development right risk, that appetite for risk is really very high, because developers have quite quickly become educated in the fact that getting these consents is not tricky. We are talking about delivery, though. We are talking about getting something done and delivered. And I think what's really important is to recognise that if you're acquiring a permitted development rights scheme with permitted development rights, be very careful that that scheme is what it says it is, because there are still developers out there still trying to flip these schemes on, having done very little, trying to seek millions of pounds in return, having done bugger all. It's really, really important that when you are reviewing these opportunities, they work. And I can't believe we are saying this so many times, but it is true. It is, because we're selling something at the moment on behalf of a receiver that the company that acquired just completely messed it up. And you sit there and go, how on earth did you do that?
I think it's a brilliant response and very wise advice, and actually leads me perfectly into the next question as well. So I'm going to stay with you, Alex. It's a question that came in advance of this from one of the audience, and they're asking, how can a developer ensure that the site they're looking at fulfills all of the requirements for permitted development? And then it goes on to ask, well, how can a developer ensure that prospective sites comply with the requirements for permitted development?
This is going to be a really simple statement. Do your homework. It's really simple. There's 4 criteria under which you can achieve a permitted development right in planning terms. Fine, they're relatively sort of tick box exercises. Make sure the building works. Get the right advice. It really is sort of similar advice throughout that's filtering through here. Get the right advice. Use agents, use consultants, use us. We are here to help. We're not here to hinder. We don't have to be eking fees out every which way. We want to support people doing the right thing. I really mean that.
Great to hear. Thanks, Alex. And Nicholas, what's your view on that same question, please?
Well, it's right. There's other aspects which are, I think, called material planning considerations, which you have to take into consideration. That might be daylight on building, noise. It might be in a conservation area. You go ahead. And, as what he was saying, is that nowadays you've got forums, who really do, carry a lot of weight.
Brilliant. Sorry, Nick, I didn't quite catch the last bit. So, thank you for that. And Doris, I know you and I have talked about this in the past. For the benefit of the audience, what's your view on the same, please?
Look, we have 2 in-house surveyors, and everything comes down to also, apart from just the planning, obviously, which is what we've all I think we're all agreeing on the panel, that you have to get your professionals and every ducks in order. But it really is to actually get to do your homework properly on the resale. Our 2 surveyors probably analyse 10 buildings a day. And we do proper valuations on it. I'm not talking about red book valuations. I'm talking valuations that will assist a vendor to make a decision as to what price he can actually ask if he's coming to sell it, so that he can achieve the maximum, leave enough the margin that a developer will want on it. So we put the whole package together on that side of it. And if you've got a realistic package, again, with your professional backup, then you have got a commodity you can sell. Whether you're doing full PD, part PD, or whatever type of use, you really do need people like us to help you make that decision and to help you move to the next step. Because without it on your own, it's like, well, let's put a finger in the air. We've got 52 days, that's lapping 100 units. And then you're going to sit there. I've got one that has got 72 units. It hasn't got a window hardly anywhere, but they've got PD, and they're arguing with me that it's a saleable commodity. I've not taken the instruction on because of the point. But it's one of my very good clients. I will mention no names at the moment, and and I won't take it on because, number one, someone will buy that. If you want it for rental purposes and you want one window in a whole flat and it's just for rental, then you have to know that it's never going to be broken up. So my view overall is really get us in to give you the resales, to help you focus. Get your professionals to do the planning, and then you've got a package. You can sell anything.
I couldn't agree more, and thank you so much. That's again a nice segue. I wanted to address the permitted development elephant in the room, and the rogue developers creating sort of undersized dwellings or dwellings without the appropriate natural light. So I'm going to spin that back over to Alex. Sure. Alex, what's your views on that?
Well, I mean, look, the legislation's allowed it. The permitted development right legislation has allowed development to be enacted in this way. If the legislation allows it, people will do it. Whether they're right or wrong in doing so, that's not for me to say. I think what's really important is that you as a developer need to get it straight in your head who you are, what you are trying to achieve here. Are you delivering sort of smaller than average units for a reason. What is that reason? There are permitted development right developers out there that have delivered very, very small units, but are doing it to house the homeless, for example. There's a developer out there doing just that, and that's a very respectable way of trying to solve a problem whilst using legislation to their advantage. Personally, I've got no issues with that being done, none at all. My concern is then what happens when that building gets recycled again. What's the state of the affair there? Are the units appropriate for resale? Probably not. Do they need more development? Yes. Is that the most economic use of that property? Probably not in the long term. But if it's solving a problem in the short term, then absolutely, why not? But the point I'm really trying to get to here is you guys need to work out your identity. Are you delivering small units for a reason? Are you delivering sensible stuff? Are you trying to build a brand up? Are you trying to build a reputation? I think all of the answers to that is probably you are, and therefore you need to question yourself as to why and what you are doing and doing it right. And I'm coming back to this real moral standing here, because legislation allows something different, or previously legislation has allowed something different. So the morality of the situation is where we really have to come into play as individuals.
Fantastic, thank you, Alex. And Nicholas, what's your view, please?
The unacceptable, for anyone to sort of develop these properties to substandard, development, because there are lots of examples in the press where they've been let to local authorities, all to the homeless or whatever, and they provided just basic. They don't have proper windows, condensation, noise pollution between the two flats and everything. Problem is going away. I do think a lot of PD is fantastic for it, but as long as it's done well and it's been well designed and well built, nothing wrong with it. I think it will be there for quite some time, and it should provide good, valuable income for people. No problem with that. But just do it properly.
Agree.
Well said. Well said. Thanks, Nick. And Alex, I have a closing question for Doris and Alex, and then one for Nicholas, if I may, before you kick us off stage. I can see the time police are upon us. So Doris and Alex, my last question to you both, I guess it's for all of the developers here at this event. What should a developer do, or how should they act or behave with an agent to ensure that they're the top of the list when new opportunities come along? Doris, for you first.
Look, I actually don't. It's in the old days, I think there would be a top of the list. I mean, if you're going back 20 years, no internet, no ability to see what's going on. I think today it's about being transparent with the agent. So for us to be on top of the list, it's really about being present, being in constant contact, building the relationship with us, you being able to support what you say, meaning putting in an offer. If you say you've got proof of funds, being able to provide it the same day, not 3 weeks later. Don't give us a hard time for us to sell you a property. Make it easy for us, and then you'll get the next one and the next one. I'm doing deals at the moment with people. I'm selling them a property every month, only because they're actually doing what they say they're going to do. And it's all about relationships. I get on with the people I work with. I actually do have a laugh. And that's what's the best thing about it. Real estate is a passion. It's not just a profession for me. And therefore, if we all work as one and work together as a team, you'll always get the property, and it's not about a list.
Fantastic. Thank you. Alex?
I really like the way that Doris has summarised that. I really do. I'll sort of share an anecdote, I think, which may best illustrate why or how I would like to be treated as an agent, and what puts somebody right in the front of my mind. I was acting on the buy side for a high net worth for an asset in Oxfordshire. And we hadn't formally agreed terms. We hadn't formally agreed. So I'd never worked with this client before. I'd never done anything for this client before. And I was always a bit at risk throughout. We had verbal agreements and whatever else over what the result was going to be. But we always worked very, very nicely together, built a really good rapport throughout this acquisition process, which took about 8-9 months in total. Anyway, the deal was done very successfully. And my boss at the time was pretty anxious that there was a fairly sizable fee riding on an agreement which hadn't been formally made. Anyway, the day after the building exchanged unconditionally, the client sent me an email saying, please prepare your invoice for this amount of money. We would be pleased to sort that. They paid it in 3 days. So my point here is really about, so I work for a big global business, right? I'm measured on how much money I make. That client, in that particular circumstance, I haven't bought anything for him again. And that's not through lack of trying. I don't mean to say that I'm a terrible agent, which I'm not great, but the point I'm trying to make is anything and everything that I now see, because of the way that client behaved on that first instance and grabbed my trust in that regard, they see an awful lot from me. They see an awful lot. So I think, Richard, the answer to your question in a more direct way is, be honourable to us. We do a lot of work for free sometimes. The very thought of being paid is what we work for. Yes, it's a passion, I agree with that, but the very thought of working, why do we do it? We do it to get paid, simply.
I agree, thank you, wonderful. And Nick, my last question for you, and again, it's for the benefit of the developers at the event. You both do permitted development, but also not regular full planning developments in London. What are your top tips, or what are your no-nos for when looking at PD opportunities, please?
Top of Doris's list, so I hope I still am at the top. Am I?
Well, you have to be very nice, you see.
You have to be nice. I think it's very. It properly, have a look at it. Obviously, when you're dealing with the agents, be transparent, and when you're ready to make your offer, make of our list, presenting and the vendor the confidence that you are it's about your own research and get policy. And if you're able to make contact with the planners before you do anything, that's time well spent and money well invested.
Fantastic.
Richard,
Thank you so much.
And just say that seems like some absolute gems in there that we will almost have to pay more money to actually hear, and it's Nicholas's signal that took away the gems. Nicholas, can you just give it a go, saying those last two sentences again, just for the benefit, so we don't miss one of those low-hanging fruits?
Well, I don't know. Can you hear me now? All right.
It's a little bit of intermittent signal, so just give it a go for the last two sentences. There's
basically saying that the important thing is to sort of make sure that you get all your ducks in a row when you're making an offer. Do your research. If you're able to sort of, forums, that type of thing, it is time well spent and money well invested.
It's a slightly painful. They're trying to steal the absolute gems from my side. I don't know if everyone else is getting the same Wi-Fi.
Yeah,
Nick, do you know what we might do? We might just do a dedicated just on that last piece of advice. But I think Alex's and Doris's advice was crystal clear as well, and it's something we hear time and time again. If it keeps coming up, it's got to mean something as well. And I really want to emphasize, their comments as much as possible. I'm just going to jump in at the end. We are a few minutes over our time, but hopefully if you are finding value in this, and our panel will write for a few more minutes, we can just cover off a couple of questions that came in from the audience. So one of the questions that came in from Duncan Gunn was, would the panel say that we may be going back to the vast central conversion areas that we saw in areas like Shoreditch and Clerkenwell in the 90s? And I know my father was involved in a bit of that, so I know he knew it. Alex, do you want to give that a look? And
Yeah. I mean, I'll do my best. In the early 90s, I was not very old, so I'm not sure I'm yeah, well, thanks very much. Do I think that we are going back to vast central conversion areas like we saw in Shoreditch and Clerkenwell? Being a southeast property specialist, it's probably not best place for me to answer that in terms of a London orientated response. I'm probably going to pass the buck immediately to Doris. I'm sorry to dodge a bullet there, but London's not my market, and it would be remiss of me to try to claim comment. So Doris, have you got anything to
for me as well? So what's the question, Richard?
So the question was, would the panel say that we may be going to the vast central conversion areas like we saw in areas like Shoreditch and Clerkenwell in the 90s? And I suppose, Alex, one of the things I would add to that is looking at some central areas, maybe like, you could consider Guildford or other major towns that are quite established, do have a centralised office system that people may not see. I know we've got 2 of our members who've got Guildford offices. We are questioning whether those are as valid anymore. They haven't got the same commute, but there still isn't the same appetite to come into the office for some of those areas. So maybe consider it outside of London as well.
I think the word vast is what's throwing me there, because in the regional marketplaces there is not a vast office market per se where the conversion could be enacted, and where there is some decent office space, it's generally protected by an Article 4. So, and that is a sort of a sub-regional level, and sub-regional influences with sort of specific local authorities wanting to protect their own employment numbers. So I think the answer to the question from my perspective in a really cowardly way is to say maybe. It's possible, but would I want to crystal ball gaze? Probably not. Do I think that vast conversion areas out in the southeast market are going to happen? Probably can't see that happening, in all honesty.
Doris, does the question make sense?
Yeah, I do. It's all about what comes to the market and what becomes available. And I think if a lot of people are suffering on the commercial, will there be a vast amount or will it be a small amount? It is going to be opportunity led. And I do think you'll see there will be a lot more, obviously, because there will be some pain. I just think it just depends what's going to happen in the next 3 months. I can't honestly say it's going to be vast or not.
I think the critical factor there is when valuers start to remove material uncertainty clauses from their quarterly evaluation. So thinking about who owns this real estate, right? This is predominantly owned by pension funds, or otherwise sort of high worth or groups. So about 5% of people own 95% of the UK, or something like that. So think about how those asset values will be affected when the material uncertainty clauses come out and valuers are terrified that they're overvaluing or undervaluing things. I think that's where the opportunity is going to really come through when the pension funds need to liquidate. So Threadneedle had a good example recently where they threw about £150 million worth of assets into the market at one time, not intending to sell the whole lot, just seeing who would be able to come up with some cash to meet some of their expectations on 1 or 2 of those assets. They didn't want to liquidate 150 million; they wanted to liquidate about 75. So you see these sorts of examples. You think, right? Well, probably it's a landowner's reality. It's a landowner's preference.
Lost him.
I've lost Alex as well.
Say again, you're lost.
We lost you for a few seconds there. I presume that was the absolute golden nugget of information
Hello?
you wanted to share, that last little bit as well. Okay. We might be pushing our luck with the timing
Just
as well.
me?
So
Everyone else is frozen.
I think what Alex was saying was from my point of view, it's just areas like Shoreditch or whatever, which we'd all love to be buying and regenerating further. You might be going out a little bit further, like around those sort of periphery areas.
Nick, I'm going to come and see you with a Wi-Fi connection. We're going to record a short video just so I can grab some of these bits of wisdom that unfortunately got cut out. We were robbed of some of your gems of information. No, that's all right. It's all right. Listen, we're dealing in the digital space, and as much we've tried to re-enter the physical realm, the internet and the space we're in, but we just have to get on with it as best as possible. I think that's probably going to round up the session for today. I do have one last question, Doris, from your perspective. In terms of the people that you know, are you seeing a trend with newer developers coming into space? TrustedLand stands to recognise experience, established track records, but we also do want to pay a nod to the fact that when Nick Cuff and I from Pocket Living were discussing, if 10% of the homes are delivered by small developers, then is it about protecting the existing SMEs, or is it about encouraging new small developers into the space, but making sure they have the right education, the right attitude, the right approach, the right funding, and the right team around them? from the people who you are meeting that are, say, the newer developers,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think are some of the advice pieces? And we haven't got many here today, but I just want to take it as a bit of a takeaway for myself, namely,
So
what are the trends you're seeing for those new developers?
We're dealing with new developers from South Africa, from Israel, and 2 other continents. And they basically really are coming here with experience overseas, but not from the London market. And it's, again, exactly the same as we've all been saying in the panel. It's about, first of all, getting them to understand what they can buy for their money, and number one, understanding what they expect for the return on the money. They might not be realistic. They might have been told that they might get 35, 45% if they do X, Y, and Z. So basically, you have to hold their hand through a process of running through a few schemes with them, get it if it needs planning. Very rarely they do without planning in the first step. So it's always going to be sites with planning, unless they're partnering up with someone in London or someone in UK, wherever they're going to be doing it. And if it's with planning, we run through the process with them. We show them the sites, we show them the resales that have been achieved in the last 6 months. Putting COVID to one side, we'll take a discount for that. We're giving them projections of what we feel, to be safe in 6 months or a year and a half to do the development. So we actually show them the whole spectrum of everything before they commit, and they usually you have to spend a lot of time with these people. And the South Africans that we've got, they've seen 15 sites from me, and now they're bidding on 1. But that's holding their hand, working as their in-house agent, and that's working with our surveyors to make sure that they feel completely looked after through the whole transaction.
Wonderful. That's very good advice. Listen, I'm going to round up here. Now that we're on a good note with Signal and everything else, and we've got all of our fantastic participants on screen to say thank you. It's an honor to have such an eclectic and experienced panel. I think it's been some amazing views and some very honest views, which is one of the things I think really gives us a real view of what's going on, not necessarily read off a press release, which is why we invite fantastic people like you to come and share with us. And we're really grateful for your time as well. And Richard, of course, making it come together with some fantastic questions and leadership. I think that sets the tone very, very well for 2021 and your chairman of the committee position as well. So we're very grateful again. Just before we head off and we go back into the open networking, you guys can stay as long as you want. I've seen people stay as long as 2 hours if they've got a good drink supply next to them. So do feel free to use Remo and the TrustedLand conference as an opportunity to catch up. Just 3 things to remind you: 4th of November, 4 till 5:30 p.m. Do sign up now. Juliana will put the link in the chat if you want to come and join us for the next monthly virtual conference session. Complimentary as always for real developers. It is this session to talk about receivership, the good side and the bad side, the opportunity side and the challenge side. So it'll be a very important session. We've got he's the vice chair of NARA, the Receivership Association, and a very active receiver who's going to be coming to talk to us. Recommended personally by Julian Healy, the CEO of NARA. We've also got Real Developer, which has got 4 weeks left. So if you are a real developer and have not registered and want to find out more, please do check in with us as well if you want to be recognized in the 2021 program with Landtech. And the final thing is, if you are an agent, if you have good quality links to good quality sites, we do have now the Q4 requirements with 28 real developers and their exact specific requirements for land for this quarter. Please do let us know and we'll send it out to you. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Thank you for joining us. Thanks again to our panel and all our guests, Robert Davison, Duncan Gunn, and Nick Cuff. Do go check out the report from Nick Cuff and Pocket. It is really worth a read as well. Very good content there. And let's go rally together and change the planning system. See you all soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.